So Max Holloway has pulled out of his fight against Alexander Volkanovski just a couple of days after it was announced, and Henry Cejudo, Triple C, has offered his services. He wants to step in place of Max Holloway and take on Alexander Volkanovski on that March pay-per-view card. Also, Derrick Lewis versus Tai Tuivasa has been announced as in the works for that UFC 271 card in Houston. I thought I'd cover all of these topics and more on today's MMA news reaction video, starting with Max Holloway pulling out of his fight against Alexander Volkanovski in March, just a couple of days after it was announced due to an injury. And now this was an injury that he had before. I'm assuming this was an injury that he had because of the Yair Rodriguez fight, and I mentioned this when the fight was initially announced. I have no idea how Holloway's going to be after that 5-round war against Yair Rodriguez, and that's kind of why I was more leaning the way of Alexander Volkanovski in this trilogy bout, because that fight with Yair Rodriguez, you can't just turn around 4 months later and get right back into a training camp, or 2 months later and get right back into a training camp. It really doesn't work like that. But Max Holloway, I guess he got injured in that fight against Yair, tried to go back into training too soon, and now he's injured really badly. And honestly, people are going to say, like, there's a comment saying Volk 3-0, but I don't believe Max Holloway is the type of guy to pull out of a fight unless there's a real reason to. So this must be like a bad broken hand or a broken foot or like a torn ACL that's really bad and he's got no ligaments in his knee or something like that. This must be a really bad injury for Max Holloway to pull out of a fight, because typically he doesn't do so unless, like, the Athletic Commission steps in like they did for his fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov. But Max Holloway, he's out of the fight. Very sad news. I was very excited for this trilogy because this was the perfect time to do it. Now this trilogy is going to get in the way of another contender at featherweight. This was the perfect time to make it happen, get it out of the way, and then start looking towards the Chikedzis, the winner of Arnold Allen versus the Korean Zombie. If Zabit comes back and wins his first fight, he's probably going to get a title shot as well. This was the perfect time to do it, but now it's just going to get in the way of all of these other featherweight contenders. I'm assuming they're going to look to rebook this trilogy anyway, and what they might end up doing is just saying, hey, we don't mind moving this one back to April or May or something like that and fighting on a different card just to keep this fight together, because we kind of need this fight to be the next fight that takes place. But seeing as Holloway pulled out, Triple C has mentioned that he's looking to get in there against Alexander Volkanovski. Of course, he's been mentioning this for a very long time, and he says on Twitter, Triple C to the rescue, at Dana White, you have my number, champ, 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 champ. With the 4 trophies, because of course C4, he's got the Olympic medal, he's got the Flyweight World Championship that he robbed Demetrius Johnson of. Let's be real, it was a robbery decision, but either way, they wanted rid of Demetrius Johnson anyway, so it makes sense. He then beat Marlon Moraes for the Bantamweight World Championship, and now he's looking for the Featherweight one against Alexander Volkanovski. I'm okay with this. Right now, I'm okay with it. Like, before, I was like, what, are they going to give Cejudo a shot over Holloway? Like, that makes no fucking sense whatsoever. But now it's like, this is the only kind of option if we want to have this fight on this card, or one of a few options, and I'll get to those other ones in a second. I don't mind Henry Cejudo stepping in. He's a big name. This has been hyped up for a while. He's wanted to move up to the featherweight division. He's had some jabs back and forth with Alexander Volkanovski. So I feel like, why not just give him the chance? But again, he entered the USADA pool in October, and someone commented here on MMA Island's Instagram comment section, why not? Seriously, he re-entered the USADA pool in October. And he did re-enter the USADA pool in October. But does this guy not get, you have to do 6 months in the USADA pool? So unless the UFC is going to bend their rules on the USADA pool and admit that USADA is an entire fucking sham that does nothing to actually ensure clean athletes and just bends to the will of the promotion, wherever the promotion wants, then they won't be able to make this fight happen in March. It's up to you, USADA. Are you a drug testing agency, or are you a puppet of the UFC that does whatever the fuck it tells you to do? Like moving John Jones's event to another arena because one commission said that, no, this guy's definitely on drugs. We can't have him fight at our arena. You're going to have to do this somewhere else. And that means that you, USADA, shimmy to another arena. The same USADA that let Brock Lesnar fight Mark Hunt, even though they knew he was on roids, just so that they could have a massive pay-per-view card at UFC 200, because Jones had already been off that card against Daniel Cormier for, what do you know, testing positive for roids again. So what's USADA going to do here? Are they going to show that they're just a pockets bitch for the UFC that does whatever they're fucking told and they're not even a drug testing agency? Or are they going to be a drug testing agency with rules? I love this situation we've been put in. If they make this fight happen in March, USADA once again is full of fucking bullshit. We need 6 months to accurately decide whether or not someone's actually been on roids beforehand before they can re-enter competition on our own scientific standards. We need 6 months to test them. If they now all of a sudden don't even need 5 full months, you could just say that they're just doing whatever the fuck the UFC wants them to. So we'll see if this fight gets made, USADA. I'm not putting you on the spot. I kind of want this fight to be made. So bend over away in front of Dana White and get this fight made, because we need a strong pay-per-view in March, because I don't know any other title fight that could headline that card. I guess you could just do Sterling versus Yan 2 as the headliner, but that would leave that card with no other title fights. So, you know, that would leave the card with nothing, really. And that March pay-per-view card would be significantly downgraded. But in terms of other fights you could do... But let's talk about Cejudo first. I do believe Volkanovski would beat Henry Cejudo. I think it would be very convincing. It's a good fight, though. Cejudo is a top-quality competitor. One of the best fighters in the world. One of the GOATs, in my opinion. He's got a lot of accomplishments that could say that as well. Like, people call him cringe and stuff, but he's genuinely accomplished a fucking shit ton in the sport. Double champ, however you want to say that he did things. He's got kind of the most tarnished legacy out of anyone who's got a good legacy, if anything, other than maybe John Jones because of those roids. But Henry Cejudo, he got the Olympic belt, the Olympic medal. That's legit. You got the Olympic medal. Good shit. Other than that, though, you robbed Demetrius Johnson. DJ beat you, but you got the decision anyway, just because they wanted to get rid of DJ and move him over to ONE FC. Either way, you robbed him there. Little bit of a tarnished legacy, in my opinion. Then, you beat Marlon Moraes for the belt, who is at the top bantamweight and has since started to really decline in that bantamweight division. And then you defend against Dominic Cruz on 2 weeks' notice. And it's like... It's a bit of a weird legacy that Cejudo has, but I don't really care. He's achieved greatness. I think he could earn a title shot here against Volkanovski. And I don't mind if Volkanovski wants to entertain this one and make it happen in the meantime. But we'll see how things go. Let's move on to some other contenders that could have a chance at taking on Alexander Volkanovski. Someone mentioned again, and this is why I hate that we have this... I hate the sport growing, because there's just so many more fucking dumbass degenerate casuals in the comment sections. Someone legit said... See, I don't mind if Ortega wants to jump in. Shut the fuck up, man. He got dominated by Volkanovski. We don't need to see that fight again. He had one moment of success in round 3 and one moment of success at the end of round 5 when Volko knew he'd won. I don't need to see that fight again, but that's a comment that's getting a lot of likes. Someone also mentioned Yair Rodriguez could step in like they did with Piotr Jan and Corey Sandhagen, even though Sandhagen was technically coming off a loss. I don't want that one either. I don't want a guy coming off a loss to fight for a belt if we can avoid it. And plus, this isn't like a short notice, oh my god, we have to figure out something now. We've got 3 months. We can figure something out. In fact, we could have fights figure something out. Qatar versus Chikadze is next weekend. If Chikadze wins that one, by KO, let's say, in brutal fashion with a head kick against Calvin Qatar, and becomes the first guy to TKO Calvin Qatar in brutal fashion, and moves himself to number 4 or 3 in that featherweight division's rankings, all of a sudden, you can do Chikadze versus Alexander Volkanovski in March, a little bit later. Fuck out my mouth, you little bit of crisp. Either way, what was I talking about? Giga Chikadze could beat Calvin Qatar, call out Volkanovski on the mic. He's a fresh name with a big KO, ton of hype behind him already, undefeated in the featherweight division. Let's move him in there against Alexander Volkanovski right away, turn him right around. All the hype, all the momentum. That's one thing you could do. You could also offer it to the Korean Zombie, but he's injured right now. At least 2 injured to take on Arnold Allen, so it'd be weird if he wasn't too injured to fight for the belt. Otherwise, he could just be like, you know, faking injuries. Who knows? Either way, you can't give it to the Korean Zombie because he's injured, of course. And if he did accept it, it'd be weird because I thought you were just injured. Now you're accepting title fights. But I get it. Titles are more important than a regular contenders bout. So you would risk it a bit more, even if you were injured. But the Korean Zombie's an option. Zabit is still a fucking option. He was number 2 in the world before he got dropped out the rankings because of his injuries. He already beat Qatar. So let's say Qatar beats Chikadze. Zabit is still a top dog in that featherweight division. Like, when you look at things logistically, compared to all of the opponents that he's taken on and where those opponents are ranked now. Zabit is also an option. I don't think they could do that because I feel like they're going to build up Zabit's hype with one big fight when he comes back. Maybe in the main event of a fight night or something like that against an Arnold Allen, a Josh Emmett, a Korean Zombie. That would be a great fight, Zabit versus the Korean Zombie. Sign me up. So I don't think there's anything. You couldn't give it to Arnold Allen because he's just that one fight away from even being considered in this current conversation. Same goes for Josh Emmett as well. So the options are see if Qatar loses to Chikadze and then do Chikadze versus Volk. Move Volk versus Holloway back to April or May just to get this trilogy out of the way because we kind of desperately need to. Or break the USADA rules and admit that they aren't really a drug testing agency, they're just a company that bends over backwards to the UFC's orders, and make the Cejudo fight before he served his 6 months under USADA. It's all up to USADA to decide what they are. Jeff Nowitzki's sweating. I love it. Anyway, it's all up to USADA. Are you legit or are you not? You've already proven you're not many times before. Adesanya grew a fucking breast under your drug testing agency and you did nothing. Let's see what they do here. Do they bend their rules? I love it. I love the fact that Jeff Nowitzki's sweating right now. Credibility on the line. Gonna have to follow the orders of Dana White. But I don't mind seeing Volk versus Cejudo. It's a great matchup. They've had some beef before. And Volk's willing to take him on anyway. So hopefully, honestly, if they're gonna bend over backwards and just ruin the rules, Volk can just fight on Israel Adesanya's card. Because the only reason this fight was in March was because Holloway needed some time to wait before his last, or after his last fight with Yair Rodriguez. And then he would come back in March. Volko was ready to turn around like before the end of the year. He wanted to get back in there in January on the February card. So maybe if they're going to ignore the USADA rules and just trust that Cejudo's clean, because arguably he is clean. I mean, he did all of a sudden get jacked out of nowhere in his career. Even though he was an Olympian athlete, he suddenly realised how to get jacked and all of a sudden became not a chubby little guy, but a really shredded to the fucking gills monster in that division with KO power. So there is some kind of riskiness to let him get through the USADA process without that 6 months. But I would say do it in February. If you're going to break the rules for the better and do it in February. Or just do it in March. I don't fucking give a shit. Moving on to another story that's happened, which is Derrick Lewis versus Tai Tuivasa is in the works for UFC 271. Looking forward to this matchup. I really do believe it's going to happen because, I mean, Tai Tuivasa's on the card, Israel Adesanya's on the card, Derrick Lewis is on the card, it's in Houston. It makes sense to even put that fight on the card. Derrick Lewis is going to KO Tai Tuivasa in the first round brutally, and I'm not going to like seeing it. Just going to point it out. I think that's how this one goes. I thought that for a very long time. I literally said, I believe yesterday in a live stream that I do every single day on this channel. So be there for them. I do a live stream Q&A session like every day, 4 hours a day and 2 hour intervals mainly each time. But we were talking about what if Tai Tuivasa took on Derrick Lewis. Sure enough, here's the fight, and I was mentioning, like, that is the worst matchup for Tai Tuivasa. You have to be bigger than Derrick Lewis. You have to make Derrick Lewis scared of you to do well against him, or have some kind of grappling threat that you can mix in, like a Blagojevic or an Ilir Latifi. You can't be a striker who's smaller than Derrick Lewis, or he will just have no fear of you and go full Derrick Lewis mode against you and batter you and KO you in the first round. Greg Hardy tagged Tai Tuivasa in the first round and rocked him really badly. If Derrick Lewis does that, it's not just going to be wobbly legs. You know what I mean? It's going to be a wobbly brain for the rest of your life. Derrick Lewis, I reckon, gets that one done. But I'm so glad it got added to the card because that UFC 271 card, Adesanya Whitaker, was looking fucking weak sauce. And it's weak sauce and we're far away from the fight. Like, that's one thing. There's going to be some dropouts. Oh, Cannonier's injured. No more Cannonier-Brunson fight. You know what I mean? Like, that could really lose a lot of steam, that card. So, we're hoping Adesanya Whitaker happens. That's already on the card. This would make the main card of that pay-per-view be, in my opinion, fuck Vince Pichel versus Marco Madsen being on the main card. I would do Adesanya Whitaker main events. Honestly, I'd do Derrick Lewis, Tai Tuivasa co-main event, because Derrick Lewis is like number 2 in the world at fucking heavyweight, so I think it's a more deserving co-main event. And also Cannonier and Brunson are middleweights as well. You never really want to do back-to-back same weight class fights because it doesn't really change up the pacing of the card. You want to have Derrick Lewis, Tai Tuivasa go out there, have this amazing, really like tense moment between these two big guys, and it will make Adesanya and Whittaker seem like technical geniuses in comparison. You don't want to do 2 weight classes back to back. It's the ultimate mistake that a lot of matchmakers do. I like to change up the pacing, flyweight to heavyweight. You get these quick flyweights, then you jump to heavyweight, and it's like, oh my god, these guys are fucking giant. Then you jump back down to welterweight, and like, oh my god, these guys are fucking so technical and fast, it's crazy. You know what I mean? You want to do that with your cards, separate the weight classes, change up the tempo and the pace. So what I would do is Adesanya Whittaker 2 main events, co-main event, Derrick Lewis versus Tai Tuivasa, opener of the main card, Jared Cannonier versus Derek Brunson. Then in the middle of all of those fights, in the feature fight and the 4th fight down on that pay-per-view main card, you would add in Alexander Hernandez versus Renato Moicano, and you'd also add in a matchup of Alex Perez versus Matt Schnell, which is a top 10 ranked flyweight bout that could be on that card as well. And that would make it somewhat of an acceptable main card of a pay-per-view, and that's the only thing I can think of doing. Hernandez Moicano, also Perez versus Schnell, and then just mixing those 3 big fights around them on that main card. But I'm really looking forward to that fight card now. It got a little bit of a boost that it needed. And also you've got Derrick Lewis in Houston, which is absolutely ideal because he's going to sell out that arena as well. And you kind of need to make sure that you're going to sell out the arena at least. Even if the pay-per-view sales aren't going to be the best, you want to make sure that you can sell out the arena. And Derrick Lewis is going to make sure to sell out the Houston arena because I believe he almost sold it out with Gane, and that was basically just Derrick Lewis and Cyril Gane on that card not too long ago. So make those fights happen, and we move on to another story that's gone down in the news recently. Muslim Salikov has pulled out of his fight against Mikel Pereira for unknown reasons. Sadness. This is next weekend. It's one of the only fucking good fights on that card. Again, another fucking card ruined. The fucking cards, man. Tomorrow I'm gonna make a rage-induced video. These cards are shit, man. January, shit. February, shit. Look at the Strickland Hermansson card. It's trash. It's fucking trash. The February 19th card just got a main event of RDA versus Fiziev, which also just got announced. These fucking cards are absolute dog shit, man. $1 billion company, best pay-per-view season you've ever fucking had. My fucking arse, that's true. You're putting on the shittest cards you've ever done, all the way January until March, and it's fucking terrible, but there we go. We can't have nice things. Muslim Salikov out of his fight against Mikel Pereira, but that's just how it goes, I guess. Another fight that's been made is Tim Means versus Jeremiah Wells. The pipes of my house are about to fucking explode. I don't know if you can hear that right now, but I've got really dodgy pipes in my house, and they could explode at any minute, and that's what that fucking noise is, if you can hear it. But Tim Means versus Jeremiah Wells, February the 5th, another fight that got made. Tim Means drew the short straw. Now he's taking on Jeremiah Wells. I'll probably pick Jeremiah Wells to win that one by KO, but credit to Tim Means, you know, taking on the tough matchups, and honestly, he's got a decent chin. He's got good boxing awareness and good boxing defense. If he can make Jeremiah Wells miss for the first round, he can probably start tuning him up in rounds 2 and 3. So it's a good matchup, but I think Wells will get this KO in the first round. We've seen Means KO'd before. And that's all of the news other than RDA and Fiziev, which I could talk about a bit more. But I spoke about that yesterday. It's the main event of the February 19th card. I called it yesterday before it was even official. That's obviously what they were going to do. And I think Rafael Fiziev wins that one. KO early on. I don't think RDA still got it anymore, and I don't trust him rushing back this soon after one of his injuries because he still had a knee brace on in one of his Instagram videos working out just a week ago, and now he's fighting on a card in 6 weeks. I think Fiziev chews up his legs, chews up his body, and then throws a head kick out of nowhere and catches him and puts him away. Fiziev gets this one done, and that's all of the news. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye. Enjoy your day.